Hey, folks, welcome back to the strategy session. I'm your host, Rick Wilson. I'm joined tonight by Joe Trippi and Mark Jacob. Mark is an observer and thinker and writer and scholar about the press. And at this moment, when the press is under such a serious attack in our country, both in terms of the external dynamic of the alterations and the changes of the media market, and the governmental dynamic, where I would argue that we've never had a government more dedicated to oppressing and attacking the media and the free press in our history. And I was thinking it through, Mark, and I want to start right out with that question. Other than maybe during the censorship regimes of World War I and World War II, I don't think there's any comparison to a government as overtly hostile to the press as the one we are living with now.
Oh, well, I agree with that. I mean, I did think of the Palmer raids, in 1919 and 1920. And they're doing it in a number of ways. The news is that they've been, barring the Associated Press from various White House events, but that's kind of minor compared to some of the other maneuvers they're doing. The FCC chairman is an author of Project 2025. Brendan Carr, he's actively harassing news media in overtly partisan ways. And then there's also the lawsuits. The attempt to make CBS News pay Trump money because they edited their own interview on 60 Minutes.
Right.
Harris. I mean, come on. I mean, so you're not allowed to edit your own interview now? I mean, it's madness. But the thing about it is, I view these kind of lawsuits that Trump is doing against the press as it's kind of a protection racket, because he sues them in a kind of for stupid reasons, but they know that the government is going to harass them if they don't settle. And guys, if you think of the Trump regime as the mob, as a mafia type organization,
right,
everything is clearer. Everything comes more clear if you look at it that way, that they're just out for money and power. They don't care about anything else. Ideology really doesn't matter, except as ways to get money and power.
Joe, we talk a lot about at the Lincoln Project about how do you preserve the institutions in the country? How do you preserve the norms in the country? And as I always try to remind my MAGA friends, there was exactly one profession that the framers made sure was inserted in the Constitution, and that was journalism. That was the press. How do you build a network of people who provide trusted information now when the government is doing everything it can to make all media and all information subject to its control?
Well, I mean, look, I've been saying this for almost a year now. We have to build one ourselves. That's what Resolute Square is about providing a media platform so that there's ways we can get this information out, put people like Mark out there to talk about this stuff. But we also have to build a social network that's ours, that's pro-democracy. I've been trying to do that with SEZ.us, says us. But we've got to do it, because there's no billionaires that are going to come in and save us. And Mark, from your point of view, how do you get the press to engage or to change the way they're doing this? I mean, it seems like so many of them are caving. So many of these networks. I mean, that's what I'm saying. When you see these networks sort of backing off and almost bowing to what's going on, I want to again get people to join Says Us. We're in the app stores now, but still, there's a lot of really talented reporting out there, but they're now working at places where, or maybe not, as they're being laid off or losing their shows. I mean,
right.
How can we somehow engage these places to stand up for their talent and let them report?
Well, that's a difficult thing, because, the Washington Post, for example, has, very good reporters, but they often, they knuckled under to Trump as far as the Harris endorsement. And And you see that all over. Los Angeles Times, same way. It's become kind of a MAGA adjacent because of the ownership, not because of the people who work there.
Right.
So where do you reach the point where you say, forget this organization, the reporters might be good, but the owners are so bad that I can't tolerate it? I mean, it's a very tough decision. I think that what you do is you hold up the really good organizations. ProPublica, for example, is doing a great job. Guardian US is doing a great job. The New Republic is doing a strong job. I mean, there are people who are doing it. It's just that there are a lot of people who aren't. And I want to say something about media credibility, because I think the news industry has done a terrible job of making it clear to the public that when politicians lie to the news media, they're lying to the public. And when the politicians try to bar the press from certain places, like they're doing at the White House now, they're really barring the public. And the news industry, I blame the news industry itself for not making that connection clear, that the reason there is a First Amendment is not to privilege an industry. It's to privilege the American people. And that means that the news media are representing the attempt to get the truth out to the public, which is the only way that democracy can survive. But the news media have done a terrible job of conveying that, and Trump has done and his propagandists have done a super good job of getting people to think the news media is some sort of nefarious bunch of people,
corrupt, etc. Yeah, I mean, and I want to go back to that sort of history question again. Since we haven't really been in a place like this before in our nation's lifetime, and Trump is so sui generis and has a set of allies that look like the media but are not.
Right.
I mean, and obviously everybody on this show knows I'm talking about Fox and the sort of MAGA media enterprises that are out there. How does journalism and how do reporters start to rebuild that sense of not only with the public of trust in the media, but a need for a media that is real, that is aggressive with power, etc.
Boy, I mean, that's really tough because the right wing has had decades of head start in getting people to distrust media. And Fox News. When Fox News started in the 90s, it wasn't as bad as it is now. It steadily got worse as it gained trust, and that's part of it. I think that the fact that other media conferred credibility on Fox that they had not earned, I think is bad. I mean, even today, you'll see that where people act like Fox News is actually a news operation. It's not. It's really, it's pro right wing government propaganda, and it lies all the time. So what do you do about that? I think that what you do, one of the things you do is that news media develop good practices where they don't say, well, trust us, we just say this is true. They become super transparent, and they explain why they're doing everything, and they show their work, because that's one sign that's of credibility and trust. And so media practices are super important. But I mean, I do think that you ought to have a more concerted effort by the legitimate media to denounce the non-legitimate media. I mean, I look at it this way: if you had a fire department that was going around trying to fix fires, but you also had another group of people who were dressed as firefighters but were really arsonists, and they were running around setting fires, well, would you view them as both as the same thing, or would you try to stop the arsonists, or would you just say, well, those are the arsonists over there, we're the firefighters over here, that's the way things are?
No, but that's actually not. They don't even call them the arsonists. That at least you said in that sentence, the arsonists over there. What they say is those firefighters say this.
Right.
The fire is good.
Right. Yes, they're trying to fight fires and just like the other people, but they're using matches and gasoline.
But again, I just think, they're fighting fires with gasoline. Exactly. But I still think this gets to ownership though, because like they went out, Murdoch, they own Fox, they own X, they own Breitbart, they own all these networks, insidious propaganda. They're basically organs of the authoritarian state now, of Trumpism, whatever. They just like doing it. The mainstream media, at least with current ownership, is not. And I read something a couple days ago that hit me that we've, in a lot of ways, what they've caused us is to lose our own faith and our power as citizens. I mean, we need to own and not rent. In other words, we'll send billions of dollars to the campaigns to go waste on TV ads, but we won't when we have the power to send that money and stand up networks like Says Us or build our own media networks that are forming, providing trust, community, trusted facts, supporting the journalism that's out there. I'm talking about a lot of the people that are getting fired right now, bringing them and creating our own media, I think, is part of the answer to this and part of the pushback, because otherwise their propaganda machine now is just so overwhelming that I just think most of the networks and papers, even of record, have a hard, are not prepared. They're just not able, because of ownership or whatever, to stand up to it. Or like I said, they'll just report that those firefighters just have a different way to fight fires than these firefighters, and then and everybody's confused and no one knows what the facts are.
Plus, the whole siloing of the audiences is a real big problem.
I think that is one of the things that has been underscored about the collapse of the traditional media is that yes, it's collapsed. Yes, there are market forces that have worked against it. All those things are true. But more importantly, in a lot of ways, the audiences have self-selected out of wanting objective and traditional reporting and press. Right. There are a lot of people, let's just be very real here, on the left who do not want to go and watch Fox or even CNN. They want to watch MSNBC. They want to be given the validation. That happens, I think, more on the right, but it's not absent from the left and the center either.
No, I think that's true. But the thing about it is, the way I look at it, I was in the daily newspaper business for 40 years, and I tried to be objective. I believe in objectivity. I was counting the number of quotes in news stories out of Washington to make sure we had equal numbers of Republicans and Democrats.
Sure.
That's how much I feel now in a false posture of objectivity. I now don't believe in objectivity. I believe that it's really important for news outlets to express their values and openly, and to say, well, that we're for democracy or whatever. Right. You have places like, frankly, I don't even know if the New York Times is for democracy. That's one thing that bothers me.
No, that's the thing. When we started Says Us, I said we're a pro-democracy social network. Everybody was like there's something wrong with that. Like, why can't? Why would the New York Times?
Why is there an issue with saying overtly you're pro-democracy in this world?
The New York Times saying we're a pro-democracy newspaper. Well, if you're not, what are you? You're autocracy says this, and they don't even do that.
I don't know where they stand on it, and which is shocking for like the most prominent newspaper in this country that you don't know whether they're pro-democracy. That's, to me, that's embarrassing. The thing about it, when I was assigning reporters, daily newspaper at the Tribune, I didn't assign every story that was out there. Chicago, it's a big city. There's a lot going on. Right. I picked and chose. I said, well, this is our audience really needs this and this and this and this. I was making value judgments every step of the way. I was not being objective. And nobody is. But
I also think it's a fallacy to say, oh, we've got to treat both sides of a lie the same way. Right. Or treat objective good and evil the same way, because there are a lot of things that happen in this world that are not that yes, you can report them straight, but they comprise something that is not just reporting. I mean, and I think I've watched reporters in this last week struggle so hard to report on Trump and his capitulation to Putin, right, to struggle with it, to try to frame it in the normal course, right, of evolving diplomatic behavior.
Right.
And every time I see these stories, I'm just like, I'm stunned, like how much work they're putting in, not to the reporting, but to sort of excusing away the not normalness of this.
Right. Amen to that. I mean, they are really trying to fit it into the old way that things were done. And this is not that way. This is a guy who, I mean, think about the Republicans from decades back and how much they were against, capitulating to Russian dictators. And then you got a guy capitulating to a Russian dictator. Mm-hmm. And that's not supposed to be like some sort of holy crap like thing.
I was one of those guys. I literally was in that last generation of young Cold Warrior types. And the idea, I'm shocked that Ronald Reagan and George Herbert Walker Bush haven't risen from their graves over this. It's like, but it's such a huge news story. They're reporting the details of the negotiations, but not as much the real underpinning, like massive cultural sweeping change of policy that's going on here that will alter the world. Right. And not judging it, to my mind, is not an excuse. It's like, we're not judging what Trump did. You should judge it. You should look at it.
Right.
As they jokingly say, ignoring it was what the Germans did.
Right. Well, that's the thing. I think that major newspapers and TV networks reported just about everything that's happened in the last decade. I mean, it's not like they ignored the news.
Right.
To me, they framed it horribly. They just did. They normalized. They excused.
Yep.
The New York Times. One of my favorite New York Times headlines is it's saying that Vivek Ramaswamy has a penchant for dispensing with the facts. They would not call him a liar or saying that he lied. He had a penchant for dispensing with the facts. That's the kind of cutesy kind of wink wink kind of coverage that the New York Times was doing, and not just the New York Times, but they are a prime offender. And sure. Really. And I also, I did my firefighter metaphor, but I'm going to do a hurricane metaphor too, because when hurricanes come, you warn the public. You tell them it's going to come. You tell them they better batten down the hatches or they might want to get out of the way. You don't say, well, this is pretty much like the hurricane that happened last year. Hurricanes happen around here.
Yeah. Will it be a worse hurricane that came in 4 years ago or not? With a hurricane coming down the escalator, it's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. What you do is you warn people. That's your job, is to warn people about threats to their well-being. That's like a primary job of journalism. And they didn't do it. Well,
but part of it, Mark, is like when we were having the conversation a little bit ago in this about, Fox, CNN, MSNBC, and whether you're a liberal because you watch MSNBC or not. And I saw I think it was, I can't remember, Roxanne, I think, raised, I'm a liberal for watching MSNBC. I think that's the wrong frame. What I'm saying is, no, we all have to put whatever our differences are on some of these issues and things, or wherever we are on a lot of, God knows Rick and I have.
Sure.
And
because we figured out there was a more important fight than some of the old issues.
Right. And the whole thing is, it's a fight for democracy. There's a movement out there with propaganda to destroy our democracy, with a leader who wants to tear it apart. And if you're watching this stuff, you want to watch a network or read information that helps build that movement and gets you facts and isn't taking even the right left, panel that's debating what the hell's going on in the old firefighter. Even if it's a more left conversation, it's not the right one, is what I'm saying. And so somehow we have to instill, we're all addicted to that in a weird way, right? Because that's the world we
grew up in that world. We cut our teeth in that world.
Well, my parents were Goldwater supporters, so I grew up in that world, too, and I do think that there's plenty of room for media to tolerate a lot of different views. I mean, I think they should report that some people think there shouldn't be any government health care or health insurance or the abortion issue. There's plenty of opinions you can have on that. To me, that's different than facts and lies. And the news media have been overwhelmed and has become tolerant of lies, just a constant stream of lies from the right. And they've normalized it. I mean, it's become something that I think major kind of mainstream news outlets expect to get lied to, and it's just routine that they get lied to.
Right. Yeah.
And they've almost just been worn down to where they don't even correct it anymore. And they never really did try to correct it aggressively enough.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think the era that we're in now is, and they do an awful, as we can all agree, they do an awful lot of that reporting of Donald Trump claimed to cure cancer today. Scientists say he may not have.
Right.
And it's too conveniently out of the actual truth about what is going on in a lot of these moments. I think that and it builds on that infrastructure that's on the right now to seize on any moment of weakness in the media. And Mark, you've done a lot of reporting on this, a lot of thinking on this. They are always ready. There's a giant enterprise on the right that if a reporter makes a mistake, if a journalistic outlet makes a mistake, it's always recast by the Republicans as, this nefarious liberal plot, and they're doing this to trick you and harm you. And I just find that to be something that the media has to heal itself on that in a lot of ways. Right. But I'm deeply concerned about how much that has become a sort of constant through line.
Yeah, but Rick, think about it. That Fox News had to pay $750 million for lying about the most important story of 2020.
Yep.
And it didn't hurt them. It was just, that was the cost of doing business for them. And
that was rounding error.
I mean, it's shocking that they didn't lose an audience over that, to where I feel like that the right wing disinformation industry is so strong now and so just relentless and prevalent. And that's why what you guys are saying is totally true, that and I'm not even talking about the left. I'm talking about pro-democracy. The pro-democracy could, really, I mean, this is what it is. And I feel like that group of people who actually believes in democracy has got to develop a wide-ranging, multi-platform approach to this thing. I do my Substack through Courier Newsroom, and the CEO there, Tara McGowan.
Sure, we know Tara.
She's complaining. She complains very validly, I think, that the Democratic Party, every 2 years they spend 3 months throwing as much money as possible at TV ads, and they don't do anything to develop, or don't do enough to develop a real infrastructure day in, day out, 24/7, 365. And also,
I can't tell you the number of times Joe and I have had this conversation.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
no,
right.
Because
it's obvious, right? I mean, it's something that should be, but there's so many people who make money off the fact that they're doing it the old-fashioned ways. The TV networks, TV stations love it the way they're doing, because they waste a lot of money on these TV ads. But and these, you look at Joe Rogan, you look at a lot of these. I'm not talking about that the pro-democracy people have to develop just really political, hard-nosed, straight news shows everywhere. I mean, they need to develop a wide variety of shows. They need to be entertaining. They need to be funny.
Yeah.
I mean, they need to be part of the media landscape, and they also need to have a pro-democracy message, kind of, that's part of the ethos. And as I say, the right wing is 3 decades ahead of us on that.
No, and what they do, and that this is the thing I think that is just insane for maybe sort of the powers that be that actually can move money, or the kind of real money that they roll into these ads, is that this movement to take us out, to end democracy,
Right.
it's relentless. It is not every hour, it's every nanosecond, every minute. They are
Yeah.
pumping the garbage and the propaganda out, and they're pumping the poison into the body politic of the country writ large. And it's not just on the networks they own. Okay, you're a World Wrestling Entertainment enthusiast. We are there. We have people that Hulk Hogan will talk to you about why these guys, are evil. The same, Ultimate Fighting Championship, UFC fights, the same Dana White, all those, they are everywhere in the culture, in the body politic, and it's about getting attention, and in this fragmented world, being where people are paying attention.
Yeah.
And we decide we'll let that happen for 4 freaking years. Let them demonize and run down anybody and any idea and democracy and our institutions. And then every 2 years, every October, we'll go knock on doors and somehow undo that.
Right.
And also the TV ads. We'll spend $4 billion on TV ads.
I'm starting to think broadcast television and door knocking aren't all they're cracked up to be.
And even the mainstream media, even the journalists, the ones that are really doing great work that you already talked about more, these, the Guardian, et cetera, they can't fight that flood by themselves. Their story is important, but there's no distribution network to distribute, to really pump that, because the algorithm, make sure it gets blocked and stuff, or make sure it doesn't get through. But that's
there's a reason why Elon Musk blocks any link to Substack.
Yeah.
Right.
They can't stand the idea of independent journalistic voices, pushing a message out on their on this right wing, agitprop network.
Right. Well, that's you're talking about Elon Musk, Mr. Free Speech. They've been very good. They've been very good at co-opting terms, and it also creating this sense that there's no such thing as a real fact, that everything's an opinion,
right?
Because that works for their purposes, and it's just so dangerous to not believe in facts anymore. And they've been so successful at kind of eroding that. I try to tell people that they need to. That little thing that you can do is talk to your family and friends. Keep posting on social media, because the truth is, and the Republicans prove this, is repetition really works. It's human nature for people to believe something they hear a bunch of times. It's just that's just a fact.
Right.
And Democrats and progressives, liberals, whatever you want to call them, tend to get bored with their own message really fast.
Yeah, they do.
That's been a huge mistake, I think, in messaging.
And I think they also end up trying to say, I think they try to wedge their love of policy into their messaging, even when it's not either productive or necessary.
Right.
Sometimes it's just tell the story. A lot of times,
for example, Rick,
when they're confronted with a lie, they respond with, well, you should check page 619 of my policy plan on this or that. And there's a disconnect there.
Well, for example, the Medicaid stuff, they say they're going to cut, that the Republicans are going to cut a bunch of Medicaid. Well, that's fine. You can say that, but get specific. Say like I just posted on social media that the Republicans, if they want to be truth in advertising, they ought to call it the Get the Attic Ready for Granny Act, because like 60% of the spending at nursing homes is through Medicaid. So, so they're going to wreck the nursing home industry if they do these Medicaid cuts. Get specific. Tell people that their grandma, instead of being treated at a nursing home, is going to be back living with them, and they don't know what to do about it. Get personal with people. You're right that this kind of these vague policy notions don't work. They're just bad messaging.
It is. You got a combination of bad messaging and bad infrastructure. That's where the danger really hits.
Yeah.
No, and that's why we have to build the info. I mean, that's what I'm saying. That's what we were trying to do at Says Us, is to build a distribution, a social network that gives a place to distribute the Guardian, the Courier, et cetera, get the information out there. And if you have 3-4 million people doing that, it becomes a powerful thing out there to keep, because they're on message that because you can't wait around for the Democratic Party. That's what I'm saying.
No.
They're not going to get there. Sometime, like 3 years from now, they'll nominate a presidential nominee who might be able to, quote, lead the party in one direction. But we can't wait for that. In fact,
No.
that's not this. So it's a myriad set of problems. How do you get the mainstream media to actually understand they've got to be reporting the pro-democracy, autocracy fight, and really explain to people what's really the fight is all about? How do we get a better message out there? But also, how do we start building our own distribution networks, things like Resolute Square, things like Says Us. And by the way, that's the other weird thing. Lots of reporters are so, I keep saying, yeah, keep posting on X, keep posting on Blue, keep posting on all those, but help build this pro-democracy network. Well, I don't know, you only have 10,000 people right now. Okay, so I don't want to post there because they want the clicks too. I mean, these are even the really good
There's
reporters.
there's a lot of really effed up incentives in this system.
Yeah. They just
and
keep
it's hard to
building.
overcome that. So, Mark, before we wrap up, what do you think are a couple of things? Because on your Substack, there are you often say, like, here's how the media can be more accountable to itself. Here's what people should be doing. Here's why you shouldn't give up hope. Talk to us a little bit about what people should be doing right now, and especially when it comes to media and how they're consuming media.
Well, I think they need to, they need to consume reports and say, well, where did you get that from? Or is that the whole story? They need to be skeptical consumers. And they also need to support places like ProPublica that are doing a good job.
Sure.
I mean, but it is, and they need to punish the people who are doing a bad job. They need to, I mean, if CBS folds on this lawsuit over the Kamala Harris thing, boy, I mean, I don't know how much CBS I'm going to be watching. I mean, people need to be punished for bad behavior in our society. That's what you do in a free enterprise system. You stop buying their product, and I think
right.
I think that's really important. As far as what the news media itself should do, I would have to say that you have all these reporters today running around the Capitol trying to figure out what the Republicans are going to do, who's going to vote for this this budget resolution and all that stuff.
Right.
One of those reporters ought to break away and go to a nursing home and talk to those old people about what's going to happen if their nursing home closes. I mean, where would they go? Would they go back with their son? Would they do it? What would they do? I mean, break away from Washington, from the Beltway, and go talk to people who are actually affected by the policies. I think that there's been this giant separation of what government does and how it affects people. And the news media has done a very poor job of explaining how government policies affect things. It's too often they treat what's happening in Washington as some sort of game. Oh, clever maneuvers here and sneaky tricks there. It's not about that. It's not supposed to be entertaining. They're supposed to develop policies that make life better for the people throughout the country. So let's talk to the people throughout the country and see how they're affected by the policies. That isn't done nearly enough. That's a real failure of journalism today.
I think that's right. Well, Mark, it's been a pleasure having you on tonight. I hope we have you on the show again soon. We're going to be talking about media and journalism a lot in the next year. And you do amazing work, and we're really thrilled that you came on the show tonight. Folks, Mark's Substack is Stop the Presses. I highly recommend it. It is terrific. Mark, we look forward to seeing you get on another show.
Well, love to. Thanks.
Thanks, Mark.
All right, folks, thank you so much. Click on resolutesquare.com. You can sign up for our various newsletters. You can check out my podcast at the Enemies List. You can also check me out on the Lincoln Project podcast. Joe Trippi, that Trippi Show. You've got Maya Mays punching up and a whole bunch of other things coming out from Resolute Square and more news coming about Resolute in the immediate future. We look forward to seeing you again next time on the strategy session. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.